Hello, I'm Ian Collins and welcome to the Express debate. Now, the issue of welfare reform is never far from the news agenda. The debate seems to divide between those people who think that we are too generous with our benefit and our welfare system and those who think that tinkering with it is damaging to those who are most in need. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by the political journalist Ian Dunt, editor of politics.co.uk, and from the Taxpayers Alliance, Andy Sylvester. Andy, let's start with you. Do you think the amount we pay in benefits is currently too high?
Well, the benefit system is a safety net. It shouldn't be a long-term alternative to work. So what we've seen over the past few years is that the government's made some steps, welcome steps, to bring that down and to have benefits always be less than people earning in work. We think that's a good way to encourage work. It strikes me this debate, we often talk too much about welfare and talk too little about work, which is ultimately what we're after.
The trouble is that there's no actual point of comparison between those two things. So it's not as if you're exchanging income for income. What they've really done is they said, when you put together housing credit and tax credits and child credits, then it can't add up to more than work. That's completely unfair, of course, because all of that housing credit money, that actually goes towards landlords. It doesn't go towards the family themselves. So they're really being penalised for the failure of the government to actually build any houses. It's a false comparison.
Well, I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I think there are places in this country where there has developed a culture of, and I hate to use the word because I think it's used unwisely, but dependency on benefits. It's not dependency, it's a trap. No one would act rationally to go out and get a job, to go into work, if it ends up being more or less a wash when it comes to the amount of money you've got in your pocket at the end of the month.
The funny thing about that, the idea that there's a trap, is that we can't find any evidence for it. So the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, they tried to find one family of 3 generations, just one, who've been out of work. If you read the newspapers, of course, it looks like there's families like that all over the place, but when they look for them, they couldn't even find one. In terms of families of 2 generations out of work, we know that probably that's about 0.8%. It's certainly less than 1%, probably about 15,000 families. Of course, 15,000 too many, sure. But actually, most of the time that happens because they've got very complex medical problems that stem from a lifetime in poverty.
And Andy, do you think that when you hear those kind of headlines that people are stuck in a poverty trap or it's a dependency culture, are you suggesting then, on the back of what you've just heard Ian say then, that this is something that is very real, or do you think there's an invented narrative there that we latch onto because it's a convenient way to digest the problem with the welfare system?
Ultimately, we talk about welfare, as I say, but we also need to talk about the other side of this coin, which is tax. Because if you take money from people in tax that are on low pay, then ultimately it gets shuffled around the system and you get these housing credits and all that sort of stuff coming through back. Why not just leave more money in people's pockets and give them the sense of responsibility that says this is your money that you've earned, go out and earn it, and you can keep it and spend it as you like. That to us seems a better way to encourage work, so maybe we should try letting people earn a little more from what they go to work.
There's some validity to what you're saying. I mean, certainly people on lower income shouldn't be being taxed, really at all. And there's actually been some positive movement towards that in the coalition. 2 caveats to that. The first one is, that means you've got to tax harder on people that are extremely rich. I'm afraid we do need to tax the rich more. Secondly is, poverty wages in this country are the main reason that we give tax credit.
Just sticking on the issue of benefits and the amounts of money that gets paid, there is a perception out there from lots of people who work very, very hard that there's a fella around the corner and maybe a few families down the road who are doing rather well by not working at all.
I mean, as you say, that mostly comes from the media, and the media mostly takes completely.
It doesn't all come from the media, does it? There are people. I speak to people all the time who say, my next door neighbour doesn't go to work and has never gone to work.
So it's not as if they just make it up out of nothing. What they do is they take these anomalous examples and they pretend that it's the norm. So typically speaking, 80% of people that go onto job seekers allowance never go onto a work programme, because they're on it for a very short period of time. You're usually on it for about 6 months before you go into a work programme or something similar.
Andy, you said at the beginning that, which is something the government have echoed quite a lot, that the amount that is paid to a family who are out of work should not exceed the amount paid to a family in work.
As I've said sort of over and over again, we need to encourage people to go to work, because a penny earned is better than a penny given. Right? It's like the first time when you're 14 years old that you get a £5 for painting the fence or washing your dad's car. It's better than the £5 you get from your dad who says, right, let's go to the shops. Right? It's work, it's the value of work, it's that culture of work, it's a culture of contributing to a wider society and encouraging that responsibility.
But what is wrong with that, Ian Dunn? Is that not, Ian Duncan Smith's sort of, I think it's the kind of Wisconsin tough love sort of experiment whereby you put out there a set of policies that might appear to be harsh, but ultimately they're there to get people off benefits because benefits are too expensive.
They don't do anything of the sort, by the way. I mean, really what they do is these just
But as Andy said, people who work feel better about that pound in their pocket than just being given it.
I don't know.
That's how it should be.
It is
It should be
absolutely right that
dignified.
it's better if people are in work. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, really. I mean, I don't always feel that way on a Tuesday morning, but generally speaking, it's better if you're in work. However, our benefit system is, as I say, in the bottom third of the OECD tables. I mean, there's some other countries below us. There's Canada as well. There's the States, Estonia. I think there's about 8 of them.
Andy, do you think, looking at the bigger picture, do you think our benefit system is middling, too generous?
I think it's too generous. Yeah, I do. I think it costs the country £160 billion a year, with £1.3 trillion in debt. So,
Well, you could tax corporations more. I mean, there's plenty of ways you can go about the same thing. I mean, you're saying it has to be this way. There's plenty of other ways we could do it. So this idea that it somehow adds to the deficit is a very sort of rudimentary, very vulgar way of looking at the economics around it. The truth is it's far more complicated than that.
Okay. Final question for you both. If you had a message then, we'll start with you, Ian, for Ian Duncan Smith and the government over the issue specifically of benefits, what would you be saying to him today?
We can improve our economy by virtue of benefits. It is not always a parasite that takes away from the economy, but in fact the way that we keep a skilled, upbeat workforce, we keep them in work and we keep them spending, develop our economy.
Okay. Andy?
I would say survive the Guardian headlines. Keep fighting. This is a crusade that could change a culture of hopelessness in too many of our communities. I think it would be immoral to give up, and I think it would be all too easy to throw money at this problem and hope it goes away. We need to deliver proper long-term solutions to something that's been blighting this country for far too long.
Okay. Andy, Ian, thank you. Our thanks to Andy and to Ian. That's it for this particular discussion. Join us next time on the Express Debate.